Welcome to Baymorr Stables Presents Chatter at the Bit. Today's topic is one I enjoy. It is just my passion within horses, breeding and breeding programs. Now, the only thing I know about breeding that I can be 100% positive about, breeding is a crapshoot. Just when you expect something, it comes around differently. It is not for the faint of heart because you are waiting 11 months to either fall in love or break your heart. And that is pretty high stakes because there's no in between. I was told once by a very reputable breeder, breeding is like a deck of cards. You know what's in the deck, you just don't know what's going to get pulled. It's a poker game. And you can do all the research in the world and still what pops out has you going, what? We had the mother of Darby, the mother of Ruby, her name was Darby, and we bred her 3 times to the same stallion, and we got 3 completely different horses. Now, everybody who knows Ruby knows that she's short and stocky and built like the old-time quarter horse, while her full sister, Helena, that we lost, was very thoroughbred looking, lots of leg, long barrel. Couldn't be more opposite. So then the question I ask is, what changed in that genetic? It's a question that'll never get answered. I firmly and strongly believe most breeders out there are very diligent and conscientious on their program. Most breeders have a program because I firmly believe breeding horses, or like breeding anything, is just one person's perception of the product they want to see. They have a vision and they are trying to implement it. With that being said, there is no right or wrong. You have people that pass judgment. Generally, they are not breeders. It comes down to if somebody is willing to put their time and their money into a breeding program, you should damn well respect that. Whether you agree or disagree, the worst statement I hear, and I've been told, is don't breed, rescue. My response is, pay my hay bill or shut your mouth. It is insulting because I spend a lot of time on my program. I want a certain amount of mares. I want them to stand a certain way. I want, and most breeders, of course there's good and bad and everything, most breeders are of the same way. If they have their stallion, they want to breed certain mares because they want to breed out faults. They want to breed the strong to the weak to hopefully strengthen the weakness. And it is a process. And it is a thought process, but it's something we have to wait almost 3 years to see any results from. And that's our time and our money and our vision that as a breeder, we're sitting and waiting. Thankfully, in riding horses, a lot of horses get sold as weanlings, and that was awesome. But in standardbreds, you have your yearling sales. There's no sense you taking a yearling to sale because that's commercial breeders. But then you have till they're 2, we have the sire stakes. Well, once they go in behind the gate, breeding's not as important. Then it's performance. And I really do feel some people don't understand that difference. It's kind of, you go, well, what do you mean? It's like breeding only gets you part way. As a breeder, you have to look at the whole package. You have to look at, I'm breeding this mare to this stallion for the end game of a barrel horse or a race horse or a jumper. And you have to think long term. Now, in my opinion, there is 4 types of breeders. We have the commercial breeders. They usually stand $1 million stallions. They get the best mares. They go to all the sales and usually have the best looking colts. They're in it for the money. They usually have 50, 60 brood mares. and they have the stud fees, and they're the ones that are feeding the industry, and they're highly respected, usually big. And then we have the small breeders. The small breeders, in my opinion, are instrumental to any industry, simply because they don't have 5 or 6 stallions or 10 stallions or 50, 60 broodmares. They usually have 1 or 2 stallions. They breed maybe 10, 15 mares a year, maybe a few outsides, but they still are looking for that commercial feedback. They still are breeding for the commercial market. And it's not on the scale as a commercial breeder, but it's still viable in a commercial market. And the third one is closed breeders. This would be probably something I don't, and this is where I'm bad, because I don't care if I get outside mares. It's wonderful if somebody approaches me to breed to my stallion, but I'm not actively pushing. I would be more so of a closed breeder, is I breed my own mares, I have my own stallion, and whether they come, go, sell, it's irrelevant to me. I'm not in it on a commercial basis. I'm more in it for the passion and the respect, but I am prepared to keep every baby that's born on my property. And Greg and I have always said a Baymorr horse can always come back. And we've had them come back, little boomerangs. And that would be a closed breeder. And then you have your personal breeders, which, again, every form of breeder is instrumental to the industry, because it's okay to be a big fish in a big pond, but you got to have the small pond too to feed the big pond. You can't itemize and say, okay, if you're not this, then you can't breed, because then you're discounting somebody's vision. And personal breeders are somebody who may not have a stud, maybe just 1 or 2 mares, but they're breeding their mares to the best stud that's across for their mare. And there's nothing wrong with any one of these breeding programs. Absolutely nothing. And you have to respect anybody who's going to put in the time to breed horses. It's something that is diligence. It's something where you kind of scratch your head and go, okay. And like I said, you got 11 months where you're either going to fall in love or your heart's going to be broke. Last year, Gregor and I, we had a great foaling season. 6 babies, 5 live, 5 fillies. It was just, wow. We were happy. It was like just ecstatic. I bred my first Dunalino. I am so proud of myself. This year we had 2 foals. 1 died, 1 aborted. Not a good year. So you have 2 options. As a breeder, you either pick up your pants and walk on and say, hey, we'll get them next year, or you close up. We've decided to take another run at it. It's just a bad year. So we kind of sit there and we think about what we want. Now, the bad theories that people put out, and I'm going to stress that these are theories, because most of everything that has been said can be disproven. And bad theories, in my opinion, is somebody who says only breed the best to the best. Well, my question is, what's the best? Because if the best stallion doesn't cross with your best mare, then why would you breed them? It's a very vague statement that is put out with no thought behind it. You have to define then what is the best. Is it the best conformation? Is it the best record? Is it the best breeding? Because anybody who tells me a horse is perfect, I'm going to laugh at them. There is no horse that's perfect. Every horse has faults. And that's what you have to think about. So if you have a top producing mare and you breed her to a top producing stallion, does that guarantee you a top producing foal? No, that does not. And that's what people have to realize. It's more of a thought process. And then comes out with, you should only breed horses with records. Well, then you got to ask yourself. A lot of these stallions have records, and I mean, let's face it, I can name 15 that are champions. But does that mean they have the license to breed? Because I also know world champions that have produced nothing. So how can we limit and say only if your horse has a record can it be bred? Because that's not a breeder's way to look at it. For many years, some of the biggest breeding farms in the world, if they wanted to keep a line alive, they would take, if the mare was getting older, they'd keep back her last filly and just breed it when she was 3. Never raced or anything like that. And that's the practice to keep lines going, because that's what you do. So would the big commercial farms be at fault for saying breeding a non-record mare? No, they're not. It's keeping the lines. Like, you have to realize performance is one thing, breeding is another. And if you're going to look at a broodmare prospect, if you're going to get stuck on a record, you are not going to be happy with what you're going to get. Because you have to look at your mare honestly. You have to say, okay, she's bred this way. And I'm not saying look at her breeding. I'm not saying go back 1 or 2 generations. I mean, you should be doing the research on going 3 or 4 generations back, because there's always that little something that might pipe up and bite you in the ass. And then there's the other theory, only breed registered horses. Well, if that was the case, there would be a lot of breeds not available, because most breeds in the world, except the Arab, are a combination of several breeds. And that includes quarter horses. Despite what they want to say, that includes quarter horses. So if it is a combination of several different breeds, how can you say only breed registered? Because somebody at that point in time had a vision of, say, breeding a Morgan to a Clyde to get something else. And in the long term, they formed another breed. How was that wrong? You know, how can you sit there and be so definite in saying only breed registered horses? That's ridiculous. Because everything, pretty much every breed in the world, is a combination of breeds. So how can you discount that when you don't have a true breed yourself? Yeah, makes you wonder. And then this one, it's like, oh my Lord. Only breed perfect conformation. Well, if you can find one, feel free. I cannot stress this enough. No horse has perfect conformation. No horse will be viewed the same way by 10 different people. Now, if I'm looking to breed a horse, I'll give you an example. I have a mare out in my barn. She's standardbred. She's out of my stud and she's cranky. She doesn't have the greatest conformation. She's a little bit swayed back. She's off, just kind of a little twisted in the back end. And I bred her to my Palomino stud, quarter horse stud, because he has nice conformation. And he's very straight backed. He's not long barreled like she is, and he's got a strong back end. And she foaled out last year a very extremely nicely put together buckskin filly, which I knew her faults and I knew his. Where he had faults, she didn't. And I come out with something nice, and it was sold within a week of it being born. So you can't look for perfection. You have to look for best scenario, because there is no perfection in horses or dogs or even in people. Nothing's perfect. So you have to think about that. And then I already covered the, don't breed rescue. Well, I just want to, like I said, you pay my hay bill or shut your mouth. It's a stupid statement. If somebody is asking you, hey, I have a mare, what type of stud would you breed her to? If you have nothing better to say than to don't breed rescue, you need to get off the keyboard and shut up. Because that's an opportunity to educate somebody. That is an opportunity to say, hey, this is what I see in your mare. What do you would like to do with the foal? Are you looking for resale? Are you looking for show? Are you looking, this is a time to step up and have a conversation to educate somebody. Ignorance has no place in the horse industry, and certainly not in breeding. And then we have, it's a bane of my existence. Live foal guarantee. Most, I'd say probably 90% stallions out there offer live foal guarantee. And my question is, how can I guarantee something I have no control over? Think about that for a second. You want me, as a mare owner, you would like me to guarantee you get a live foal when I have no control over that mare when she gets home. That's ridiculous. Completely and utterly ridiculous. We cannot, as stallion owners or as mare owners, we cannot remotely guarantee something that is unpredictable. We can't guarantee something that's not clear. And this year, in fact, we had a colt born. I had bred to a very nice stallion, and we lost the colt. And it wasn't any fault of the stallion. It wasn't any fault of the mare. It was one of those things where, okay, it didn't work. I don't expect that stallion owner to give me a live full guarantee. It was nothing they did wrong. So you have to, and there are, of course, certain scenarios where you can bypass or adjust. That's a judgment call on your part. I personally cannot guarantee something I don't have control over. And that to me is logical. It's that just, you have to be prudent in what you're going to guarantee. Mind you, if somebody breeds to my stud and they have a problem and, there's a problem and the foal dies or whatever, I'm more than happy. Approach me and say, hey, this colt died. I don't know why. I don't really have any answers. It's like, I'm going to give you a free breeding back because that's an integrity issue. But I'm not going to put it in writing because I can't guarantee something I have no control over. It doesn't work in my world. And then we have in quarter horses and paints and a few other breeds, we have the panel testing that is required for all stallions to stand as stud, which I think is good. The problem I'm having is, why is it a secret? If you're standing a stallion, you have a website, you have a Facebook page, post the results. I don't want to take your word for it. I want to see the results. If you choose, my stallion's 5-panel clean. If you choose to stand a stallion that is not 5 or 6-panel clean, you need to post the results next to that horse's name. And before you breed a single mare, you have to explain what he is a carrier of and explain to the mare owner that there could be complications. It's not a matter of, well, if I don't breed one positive, it's fine. It's not that simple. I had one that came positive for PSSM1. When I started reading up on it, I was shocked. It was like me and the breeder talked about it, and it's like we had a plan. And it was the first one I'd ever owned, and it was sad because he was gorgeous. But I had to look at the long term, and I had to think, if I stand him as stud, do I have the right to tell a mare owner that mare owner has a 50-50 chance of getting a live colt? That's not fair to them. That's not fair, and I couldn't do it. And that goes with anything. Some of them need a second carrier to become positive. But the reality is, if it's a carrier, if you have no problem standing your stud, then you have no problem explaining where he's a carrier. That's the way I look at it. Post your results. Not while I said, because if you can say it, you can prove it. And a mare owner should not have to see. That is one thing they should not have to see or request from you. They should not have to request a copy of the 5-panel results. Because one, they're on file with AQHA. But two, that should be offered up. Just my little tidbit. I know I do. Now, we go into what is expected of the stallion owners and the mare owners. And when you have a program, you, as a mare owner, you need to know what you're breeding for. So if you have a little ex-reiner mare, but you want to get into barrels, you don't want to breed her to a reining stud. You want to breed her to something with a bit more size and substance. And that's okay, but be honest about where your mare's faults are. So I'm going to cover the stallion responsibility first. Stallion owners, oh, we're a crazy bunch. Now, there's 3 questions that have to be answered in your stallion ad without a request from the mare owner. 1, your stud fee. 2, what is your breeding? 3, AI or live cover. Those are 3 questions, and I know people are going to disagree with me. Well, I want to see his record. I don't give a shit about his record because that was manufactured. I want to know what's standing in front of me. I need to see the confirmation. I need to see the breeding. I need to see the back breeding. I need to know how much it's going to cost me. To me, in my opinion, records get you a look, but it doesn't get you the contract. It's like, great, he performed, he did this, that's well and good. But I want to see what is that horse carrying that's going to produce with my mare. And that has nothing to do with a record. You just have to figure it out. And like I said, AQHA requires all stallions standing at stud to be 5 or 6 panel tested. And but most stallions have a show record. But if you're not breeding for the show ring or you're not breeding for performance, my stallion does not have a show record. But he has the back breeding I like. But I'm not breeding for the show ring. I'm not breeding for performance. My program doesn't have the value of a performance because it's an all-round horse. It's a ranch style horse. So if you are breeding for trail horses or you're breeding hunter jumper and just wanting, you have to realize it goes back to what are you breeding for? So it kind of becomes a process. It's not easy by any stretch, and I cannot stress enough. Most breeders have a program in place. This is what they're doing. So then we have mare owners. Mare owners, I will say one thing. Ignorance is no longer your defense. If you don't do your homework, you're an idiot. So they're all quick to say, well, I want a life full guarantee. It's like, I want $1 million and a mansion. You have to ask the right questions of your stallion owner. 1, you're going to ask, and they have the right to ask this question too. Is he 5 panel negative? Can I see the result? What is the stud fee? What's the breeding? If you don't know your mare's breeding and you're asking for the stud's breeding, that makes no sense at all. If you're going to own a registered horse, minimally know how to read the papers before you breed them. And know what shape your mare's in. Know your mare's conformation fault. And the first person to tell me, oh, well, my mare's perfect. In fact, it was just going back to when we had JJ. And I had a girl, and he was no show record, but he was something we took a chance on. We believed in him. And she called me up. I forget where she was from. Somewhere in Ontario. Who knows with me? I forget my name if it wasn't attached. And she called me up and she says, well, I have a quarter horse mare. I said, that's wonderful. I said, so what are you looking for? She goes, I'm looking to breed my mare. I said, okay. I go, what are you looking to do with the foal? Are you looking to sell it? Are you looking to show it? She goes, well, it's kind of irrelevant. She goes, because my mare is doing your stud a favor. And I kind of went, how was that? And she goes, if I bring my mare to a stallion, I want them to accept that this mare is going to help their stallion. And I said, again, how's that? And she goes, well, she's perfect. I said, by whose standards? I'm not annoyed at this point, but I got a feeling this is going to turn sideways. And as you might have guessed, I get annoyed quick. So she goes, well, my mare, she rang off. She did barrels, she did reining, she did cattle sorting. And I said, yes, you've told me what you've done, but you've not told me why she's perfect. She goes, because she is. I go, what's she bred like? Well, what do you mean? I go, well, what's it say on her papers? And she goes, well, it went back. She goes, well, she's a great granddaughter of Nearctic. I said, are you kidding me? She goes, what do you mean? And now I'm annoyed. And I said, a great-great-granddaughter of Nearctics, which is a thoroughbred, I might add. I said, and you're trying to tell me, you can't even tell me what's on your horse's papers. But you've done this, this, and this. I go, what makes her perfect? Because she's a great-granddaughter of a champion stud who cares? I agree with going back 4 or 5 generations, but you got to know the first parts too. So she got a little angry with me, which I'm okay with. And she goes, your stud's nothing bred. I said, well, that's your opinion. I go, we believe in him. He's something we believe in. Well, he doesn't do anything. Yeah, he does. He breeds our mares. And she goes, well, you don't understand. It's like, yeah, I'm not having this conversation. I don't give a shit if you breed your mare or not. I said, but you need to, before you breed your mare, you need to smarten up. You need to ask questions. You need to do some research. And I go, and I'll be the first one to tell you, and I'm not trying to insult your mare. Don't get me wrong. There is no perfect horse in the world. Well, she hung up on me on that. And I kind of chuckled. I thought it was kind of funny. So then fast forward back, we moved out to New Brunswick here. And I had a girl call. I just put Tommy's ad out. Now, you got to realize, my golden boy is a handsome boy. We call him the golden boy because he's very handsome. But anyways, he's everything we would like in a stud. So I had a girl call, and she goes, you're standing in the Palomino stallion. I said, yes, we are. She goes, is he 5-panel negative? I said, yes, he is. I said, if you give me your email, I'll be happy to forward that over to you. He's, in fact, color tested also, which I'm beginning to believe that stallions should be color tested. But I'm not sure about that one yet. So then we were talking, and she had a little Arab cross mare, and I said, yeah. I said, I don't begrudge crossbreeds. I said, I bred my standardbred mare, and I bred my Arab cross mare to him, and I go, and I like the babies that came out. And she goes, well, when would be a good time for me to come out and ride him? I said, ride who? She goes, Tommy. I said, why? Like, I was completely flabbergasted at this point. She goes, well, I got to know how he rides before I breed to him. And I went, do I come to your kitchen and shit on your floor? She goes, what? I said, in what world would I ever let a complete stranger ride my stallion? Because she feels she needs to ride him to know if he's right for her mare? Last time I checked, there was no riding during that process. I was not very nice. And it was like, yeah, no, that's never going to happen. She goes, well, you won't get any mares. I go, I don't care. I'll buy my own mares. Which is a bad thing to do as a breeder, but that's just kind of the way I am. So you kind of sit there and you go, okay, so mare owners, the best advice I got for your mare owners, straighten up, do some research, and keep your mouth shut. Because you cannot tell somebody or not that their breeding program is wrong or bad. It goes back to what I say about insulting things. If you don't know, shut up. If you're not sure, ask. If you want to learn, talk. But you have to respect somebody who has designed a program knowing that they're probably not going to see the results of that program in 3 to 5 years. They're willing to spend that amount of time. And if somebody is willing to put their money in for that duration for a program, as my herd is running down the hill acting like retards, God, I love my bunch. Yeah, they're retarded. But I got a hell of a nice looking yearling filly out here. She's just awesome. But I digress. So you have to respect somebody who's willing to put in that effort and that passion. If you can't respect that, then you don't have any business breeding. It's kind of one of those things where it's okay to be a mare owner. Mares can have one colt a year. Sometimes they miss. Sometimes they kind of, oh, she's naked. Oh well. But stallion owners have more pressure because in a commercial atmosphere, stallion owners have 3 years to prove that stallion, or they no longer become as viable. 3 years. The first year they're going to get the mares. The second year they're probably going to get breeds. But the third year is where that first year is coming up. And if they don't make the top sales and don't make the top points, that's a mark against a stallion. Stallion owners are under a lot of pressure, commercial breeders, commercial and the small breeders, because they need the results in order to support their stallion. There's been a lot of stallions over the years, and I'm going to revert back to standardbreds here, that one big one comes to mind is Niatros. He held the world record for ages of 149. And to be honest, as a stallion, he's considered a dud. He was out of Albatross, who was an iconic stallion in standardbreds. And, you know, you sit there and you go, why didn't he produce? Was he a fluke? You don't know. And now we have, and I am so proud of this, Canada has the fastest standardbred in the world, named Bulldog Hanover. Now, his first crop has hit the ground this year, and I'll tell you, it looks promising. But it's something everybody's going to want. But if he doesn't produce champions in the next 2 to 3 years, people are going to question that. So stallion owners have it harder because their minds have to constantly be working. They have to get the right mares. They have to get the right babies and the right trainers, and it makes it hard. And you sit there and go, well, it's just breeding. No, it's not just breeding. I lay in bed at night thinking, okay, do I got to do this, and this? Breeding can be expensive. You know, you can alleviate expenses somehow. You can do it expensively. You can, there's so many different ways. There's no wrong way to do it. As long as it's the sire and the dam are healthy and are kept healthy, there is no right or wrong. I don't believe in just one way to do anything. So we'll go fast forward now. You've bred your mare. So in quarter horses and riding horses, you pay the stud fee at time of breeding, which is probably why they get the live foal guarantee. But in standardbreds, the stud fee is not paid until 30 days after the foal, nurses, and stands. Now, I can definitely see the problem with not really the problem, I can see the difference between the two. In standardbreds, you have to register your baby by December 31st of their weanling year. After that cutoff point, you don't have the option of registering them. You basically pissed it away. In quarter horses, I believe, and this is entirely my opinion only, I believe in riding horses, quarter horses, apps, whatever. I believe registration should be refused after the horse is 2 years old. Because it comes down to a prioritize. I don't think having a 4 or 5 year old getting sold and saying, oh, by the way, I can register this, I don't think it does anything for the breed. And there was a reason it wasn't registered, whether it be financial, personal, confirmation, attitude, situational. I don't care. But there was a reason. And you have to sit back and wonder, okay, if I can't register my riding horses by time they're 2, why am I doing this? I think as a breed representative, you would want to showcase that stallion, that mare, by having registration papers. I personally believe, and I may stand alone, and that's fine with me, that I think it should be standard that all horses are either registered by time they're 2, or you don't get to register them. Now, that wouldn't include the warm blood registry and most of the warm bloods that have to go in front of a judging panel. That's a whole different, get certified. That's a whole different panel. But I think like registrations. Now, I can hear the people going, oh no, that's not right. When you look at breeding, breeding is a way to keep the breed going. And there's a lot of lines. Like I breed mares with the Coys Bonanza in it. I've done my research. I absolutely love Coys Bonanzas. But that's also a line that's been relatively idle for the last 20 years. Why did it go idle? Because the owner was I would say more of a closed breeder. He didn't get commercialized, and it kind of, as the horse industry, you have to accept all steps of breeding. Because when you start closing, lines lose. And it's going to be like I can breed my mares to any stallion I want because of the Coys Bonanza. It's given me an outcross. There's a lot of line breeding, like the old saying is, it's only inbreeding if it doesn't work. Heard that for years. And it's actually true. But when you got something that's line bred, you can sit there and go, okay, but where do I go from there? If you're line bred on Highbrow Cat, or you're line bred on Pepto Boonsmall, or any of the top stallions, where do you go from there? Because a lot of the stallions have the same breeding. You are literally pigeonholing that line. So what you need is, you need to throw something else in there that's going to give you a branch out. I believe that's what Coys Bonanza is doing. I do believe all the big farms, if you even mention Coys Bonanza, first thing they'll say is, I got mares back to Coy. You don't hear too much. It's the one stallion that you don't hear a whole lot bad about. But you have to look at the branches that are there. A lot of people do line breeding. Some of it purposely done. Some of it, they just don't know. And you got to realize when you do line breeding like that, and my stud line bred, love them. But you have to add that branch. You got to have that way out a little bit. And people don't realize you can't keep line breeding because then you don't have anywhere to go. And like I said, breeding goes beyond just the gestation, the breeding, the maternity. It goes beyond that. And every horse I breed here I breed that if I need to keep them, they can come right back to my herd. And that's what I like to do. Not saying it's right or wrong. But you have to think about, okay, if it's line bred. Like for years, when I was doing quarter horses and doing the research, I was hard set. I will not support Impressive. Impressive was HYPP. He was detrimental to the industry. Commercial breeders, they knew it. Me getting stuck in my standard bred way. Boy, did I get sit on my ass on this one. And I was hard. It's like, nope. And, well, our new horse is line bred Impressive. And she's a nice looking mare. She's not halter looking. She doesn't look a whole lot of halter. But she's also 5 panel. I want to stress, she's 5 panel negative, or I wouldn't, like, she's just a doll. But she's impressive. And I understand now why breeders kept breeding to Impressive. Because it was a roll of the dice. And for what he put out, it was worth it. But it was a roll of the dice. And it still is a roll of the dice. And you kind of, breeding is really just like rolling the dice. If you're breeding for color, you got to know your color panels. And if you're breeding for endurance, you got to know, okay, what is the best endurance? Well, you go to a lot of endurance, they're going to say Arab. Yes and no. I know an endurance rider on my friends list who rides a champion standardbred racehorse. And she also has a gaited mare. No Arab. And she is competitive. And she is just amazing at her ability. But you have to know what breed brings what to the table. is you have to know that if you're going to be crossbreeding, what are you breeding for? Like I breed quarter horse to a standard bred. Well, I know I'm not getting a racehorse. Pretty sure about that. But what I am breeding for is I am breeding for a ranch horse. I'm breeding for a horse that's a good trail horse. I'm breeding for that all-round horse. And that's okay. That's my program. It may not be everybody else's program, but that's my program. But I know what I'm going to bring to the table. And my stallion, like a lot of stallions, has a great brain. His babies, my hubby just went out this weekend and he grabbed our 2 yearlings. Now, you got to realize we have little Lena, who I call the princess, because we had to wean her at not quite 5 weeks old because we had to put her mother down. For 6 months, Gregor and I didn't know if she was going to make it. So she's a bit small, kind of really at an ugly stage. And then we have our other filly out of Ruby, who's Derby. So I said, Greg, enough. I want them shaved. I feel when some babies are born a bit later in the season, their baby fur with their winter coat, with their next hair, sometimes can look a little matted. So I like shaving them. Well, we had a friend of ours over, and she goes, yeah, she was dropping her mare off to be bred, a very nicely bred paint mare. And Gregor says, well, would you mind helping me, shave the babies? She goes, sure. So when they were sitting there, they had it done within 40 minutes, maybe an hour. Let's give them an hour. The girl couldn't believe that it was the first time we'd ever pulled the clippers out. Hey, I didn't even know Darby tied. But that's what, it's not, part of it's genetics, but part of it is where you're handling things. And Gregor is called the baby wrangler because he has the patience of a saint. But when it comes to doing something, he knows what's right and wrong. He knows what to do and how to do it. But he had the baby shaved, and it was the first time with clippers. There was no squealing. There was no TQ. There was no, oh my God. It was like you go in, you do the job, it's done. And they're ready for clippers. You can go near them with clippers. And we had to have an older set of clippers. They're not quiet. But it was the way Greg handled it. Greg was calm, they were calm. But, and that's what I'm saying, is as a breeder, there's certain things you can step over. And you're always changing your logic. You're always changing your theory to adapt to what you're learning. And I'm learning so much about the riding horses. And I still hate blue-eyed horses. They look devilish to me. I don't care. They're still the devil. Won't have one. But who knows? That might change in a couple of years. And every breeder will adapt. And every breeder will, tweak their programs to suit either a different market or, and it's a thought process. And people need to realize, non-breeders and everything, that pretty show horse you're on was bred by somebody. Somebody thought out that breeding. And you have to sit back and say, okay, this is a lot harder than it looks. It is. Because you're not getting big returns. You're not getting big accolades. The best thing you can hope for as a breeder is that we put all Baymorr in all our horses' names. And we are thankful when the people we sell our horses to use the registered names. Because that's what we get as a breeder. That is our accolade. Knowing that our horse that we bred is being done and handled as a Baymorr horse gives us the greatest pride. And that's any breeder. Any breeder, you go to any top breeder, and I have several of them that I could reference. But these are people who, it's not a job. It's not something where you can close the book at 5 o'clock and say we're done. No. Your year starts in the morning and ends at night. You don't get a break because, foaling season. No, because once foaling season's done, you have to worry about what studs are you going to breed to that mare. You have to go in the stallion market and find out what stud is the hot commodity if you're a commercial breeder. You have to know your mares are going to cross. You have to look at the back breeding. You have to look at the maternal line. You have to look at the paternal line. And it is a constant. on what you're doing. It's not just, oh, I'm going to breed that pretty horse to that pretty horse. It's not that simple. And to even suggest it is insulting to breeders. It is a lifelong passion. Once a breeder, always a breeder. And once you're in horses, you're always in horses. I'm hoping one day, my hope is for standardbreds is to see my horse I bred in the race program, is what I'm hoping for. I'd love to see a Baymorr horse starting at any standardbred racetrack. In quarter horses, I would love, and this is a big dream, I would love for one horse we bred to go to Congress, and be competitive, But all in all, those are my big dreams that I would love one day. But you want to know what makes breeding worthwhile? Is when that baby comes out and they are so gosh darn cute. But they're bad little bastards. They're BLBs. But the reason Greg and I do it is because we enjoy offering suitable horses to people. The feedback we get and the accolades we get mean the world to us. It just absolutely means the world to us. And that's why we keep breeding. Of course, we have our dreams. What breeder doesn't? Like, I would love for somebody to send me, say, I got a big belt buckle on one of horse you bred. Oh, yeah, someday. But for now, we're content being proud of our program and the people that support it. And we're proud of our stallion. And like any other breeder, we're going to continue to go on. And I want the people out there to look at breeding in a new light. Of all the aspect of horses you can do, I can actually say, because I've done every other aspect of horse, I can actually say breeding is the most emotional, most time consuming, I wouldn't say least rewarding, because, if we get a live baby, that's a reward. But it is a roller coaster, and it is a thought process, and it's a lot of work in behind the scenes that you'll never get credit for. But as a breeder, that's what you want to do. So going forward, I would like everybody to respect the breeders. Mare owners, get an education. Know your lineage, know your conformation, know what faults your mare. There's nothing perfect out there. Stallions, there shouldn't be any guesswork. You have to answer the questions. You have to educate. Everything is a connection. Everything is a discussion. When something's left secret, walk away. And that's the way I feel. Everything, and it's the same way I go through every day, Gregor and I. It's like, you ask me a question, I'm going to answer it honestly. You want to see my vet bill? I don't care. I got nothing to hide. And there has to be, especially in breeding, is where the most transparency is needed. And it's tough because we're putting our product in the open. It's going to be judged. It's going to be, and it's sometimes hard. If somebody's critiquing your stallion, you can't say they're wrong because they might not be. And I say critiquing, not insulting. There is a difference with me. If somebody's saying, I just don't think your stud would cross my mare. As much as you want to say, yes, he would, you have to listen to their reasons. And you have to discuss it with them because that's our job. And mare owners, same thing. Don't run to a stud just because, my friend said. No, do your homework. You'll be more than happy with what comes out if you do it right. But that's my pitch on breeding. Take it or leave it. But have a whole lot of fun. Respect the breeders. Stay tuned.